Right? And I'm not playing.
All right, folks, welcome to another comic talk. And look at this. I've got the all-star panel here. We're going to rock and roll through some comic book talk. That's right, with us. So hit that chat. Let us know your thoughts. We are going to dive deep into some Wolverine that goes back to it goes back a minute. It goes back a minute, and it's some good stuff. It's called Old Man Logan. And if you guys don't know, it's kind of an interesting read because when you were reading Wolverine at the time, and I really wasn't, I kind of caught this because the cover was so cool, and someone else said it was good. So I got it like 3 or 4 issues in, then I kind of had to go backwards. And then, of course, the trade paperbacks are out now. But you're reading Wolverine, and then all of a sudden, it's like this Mark Millar story and Steve McNiven art, and you're like, what is happening? And then it's like whenever Old Man Logan's over, it's just like, well, let's return to the regularly scheduled Wolverine story arc. So it was kind of a strange experience in real time. And we're going to talk about Old Man Logan because it is kind of cool. So with me to my left here, how you doing, my brother Roman?
I am well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back to talk comic book stuff. This is always fun. And this book, I mentioned a little bit before we started this. I think it's a largely for modern audiences an overlooked book, and I think it's something that is definitely should be on your stack of books that you need to read. So I'm excited about this one, and I have action figures I'll show later.
Awesome. Yes, we are definitely going to do that. And let me circle around there to Shieldwall. How are you, brother?
Hi, how's it going? How's it going, everybody? Hey, thanks for having me on here and talking about this this great book. I hadn't read this like back when it first came out or anything, so it's kind of new for me. But it's a good one. It's really good. So thanks for having me on, and look forward to hearing everybody's thoughts on that.
We'll do it. And then right here, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Left Eye Ego. How you doing, brother? It's great to have you back.
I'm doing good. I actually haven't gotten a comic book talk on a mainstream comic in a while, so it was interesting to actually read this story and I talk it over with you guys. So I'm excited to talk about it too.
That's great.
Ego, had you read this book prior to this? Oh, you had. This is this is all brand new to you.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I wanted. Yeah, that's why I want to hear from you guys, because when you said, "Have you?" Like, we're gonna do this, I was like, you know what? I probably should read it if you guys are recommending it. So I read it, and it was actually really good. I read this like in an hour. Like, I don't think I've ever really read comics. Yeah. So a really quick read, but it was actually full of detail. So yeah, I'm ready to talk about it.
So let's start there too, because this is a book, and I think Roman, you'll agree, and you, Shieldwall, you chime in too. This is a great recommend for a noob. This is a great recommend for a noob. You don't really need to know much about Wolverine. As long as you know Wolverine kind of exists, he's this mutant that has claws and can heal. That's about all you need to know. You can be in this book, and it will help you along the way, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, you just need a vague idea of the Marvel universe.
Right.
You know, even if, quite honestly, even if you didn't know who Hawkeye was, for instance, it pretty well explains itself in the book. You're right. This is a perfect book for a noob. Also, there's not a lot of time commitment, as Ego just said. You can get through this book in an hour if you want to. You're just sitting there reading it. You can get through it. But man, what an adventure it is. And it really, for me, kind of redefines, or maybe reinforces is a better word, this character of Logan Wolverine.
Okay. What do you think, Shieldwall? Is it like a good book for a noob? Somebody who doesn't really maybe read a lot of comics or wants to read more? I think it's a pretty good recommend.
It is, because you have to have, I think, a little bit of basic understanding of who people are in it, or it'd be helpful. Like, you have to know who like Dr. Doom was or is, but you don't need a lot. You just need to know the bare bones basics. So if you watch like the old X-Men movies, like the 2000 X-Men movies, if you've watched any of the Marvel movies, and have, and if you watch like the Fantastic Four movie, any of like the mainstream movies, you'll know who these characters are. And it's a good story because it's like a cross-country travel story, kind of like The Last of Us in a way, where you're trying to go from point A to point B. It's, you have a cargo you're trying to transport, and there's all these challenges along the way. So in a way, it's a linear story in that aspect. it's easy to understand the motivations of the main characters. It's like a Western in a lot of ways.
Very
Uh,
much so.
you get like the old gunfighter that's, wants to put his guns down, but the world won't let him. So that part really drew me in. The art's good. It's not crappy, cheap art. It's good art. The writing is pretty good for the most part. It's got exciting elements to it. It's got action. It's got feeling and heart. It's got like a story to kind of, go with that, and makes you think about different moral dilemmas. So that makes a good book. I think it would make a good video game, honestly. From what I saw.
Probably actually would. That'd be cool.
I'm glad you made the Last of Us analogy, because that's a really good one. I hadn't really made that connection. This is so let me ask Ego, because you were not familiar with the book. Because this book is entirely set in this concept of a completely alternate future, right? So this is very similar to a book like Kingdom Come, right? This isn't like the world that we're in. This is one of the multiple universes and Earths that are out there. This is one of those possibilities, is that this is what happens. This is technically called Earth. For those of you that are uber nerds like me, this is 807,128 Earth. I know, it's ridiculous. I have no idea why Mark Millar, I didn't look up, or I don't think I've ever hung on to the knowledge of why Mark Millar picked that number, but I'm sure it has some sort of.
Well, he really picked that number?
I assume he did, yeah, because this Earth does not exist prior to this, and I assume. Yeah. So, and this is a story, and I don't want to derail the conversation, because they come back to this series several years later. They do another mini series. Now, that mini series is designed to take this story and then sort of like start pulling Logan in, cramming Logan into this secret war story where these different Earths are disappearing. And then it goes right through then it has its ongoing series where it's like you're following Old Man Logan through a journey again. So it is an interesting concept that Marvel has played with, but I think they're spoiled. They've taken advantage of this concept of multiverse. They couldn't just leave it alone. It's Old Man Logan's universe. It's there. You can do Old Man Hawkeye in that universe. You could do in that universe, but that's not how they operate. So, but with that said, I wanted your thoughts on like the multiple universes, and your thought on like, oh man, this is kind of a cool concept that this is sort of an alternate future or something like that out there.
I didn't know it was an alternate future or anything like that, but I did read it as like a close-ended book. I think that's the one thing that I noticed with Mark Millar. He makes most of his books, if you take it at face value, it could have been a close-ended story and you could leave it there. And it's when they keep making more stories after that, I can get confused about Earth, multiple Earths, dimensions, time lapses, and things like that. So I was like, well, okay, if I'm reading this as a close-ended story, it actually makes sense. It was actually a cross-country adventure to me. So I actually liked it. They made it that you're reading, but they're still moving with it too. And they give you the maps of where they are at this particular chapter. Yes. So I like the fact they kept us up to date. They try to, every issue that you'll have after, they'll say, when we last left our heroes, blah, blah, blah. But right underneath that is the map. And they said, hey, we are here. You're like, okay. And I could pick up from there and go. So I actually like that.
Yeah, if any of you are in chat watching this premiere, if I'm not able to make that premiere for some reason, you want to know the actual original run, it was Wolverine. It's 66 through 72, volume 3. And then there's a giant size Old Man Logan. That's the finale. So the trade paperback's what we're going to look at, because it was nice to be able to kind of use the digital file and kind of scroll through, because it's a little bit easier to having to deal with the multiple issues. But that was a really cool thing, because like you were saying, Ego, I was a little late, so I grabbed 68 and I look at it, and there's a map. There was a backstory. Yes, I wish I had read the first two before I read number 68. But I'm like, okay, now I have 68. I want 66 and 67. I got to go get them right now. And so I think it's really, really good. And I think when we're going to go through a little bit of this, your thoughts on some of this kind of stuff. So right off the bat, we end up with sort of like a mystery box thing. Like we're told a little bit about what's going on, but we don't have things necessarily spoon fed to us about.
I love
this
that about
beaten, battered. Yeah, so I want your thoughts on this concept. And what they do is they kind of sneak flashbacks to us, but only a couple of panels at a time. You say you like that, Roman? You like the way he didn't
I
really?
like it a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, Logan is definitely, we'll call it PTSD, which isn't even really an accurate enough term for the trauma that he went through, but he's getting these flashes. So you're seeing this through him. It just, they hit every now and then, something's going on, then he's back in the past for when this, earth shattering incident happened. And I like that a lot. I didn't like that they didn't overplay it. They didn't give you too much too soon, so you're like, oh, okay, that's what happened. Nope, they take their time. I mean, you're quite a ways into the story by the time you actually get the incident. You
The
know,
big
it was
twist.
something
Yep.
big and terrible, but you don't know what it was for a long time. And man, that's when the reveal happens. It's big, and it definitely has impact on you, the reader. So yeah, I like that a lot, man.
Shield, while you were new to this too, and I think what was interesting was they kind of very clearly tell us very early in this issue, okay, the supervillains got together and decided, oh crap, we outnumber them like 20-1. If we strategically put certain villains side by side, they can take down these heroes. They basically have a organized event to do that. They win, and they win big. They conquer everything and then just start divvying up the country. But that's not the spoiler. That's not the twist. That's not even the reason that we're having this adventure. Was that really kind of a cool thing for you? Because you made a Last of Us analogy, and that's really hitting me pretty hard right now. I'm like, man, talk about a missed opportunity with the show, because it felt like they couldn't get out of their own way with mystery boxes. They would just constantly be tripping over their own mystery boxes as they were trying to do things thinking they were clever. This book really nails all of that, I think, really, really well.
Yeah, I agree. It tells the story through limited flashbacks, but there's a lot of movies that do that. So it's a mystery for the reader. Okay, it's 50 years in the future after this event. You got Logan. You're like, okay, he's old. He's got a family. He's on a farm, and you're like, okay, this is new. And if you've never read one comic book before, this still has like that old West homestead feel to it. He needs to make rent. Some, things are broken, not working out. He's got a kid that's rebellious. He's got, a family to protect and feed. And so this is why he is doing what he's doing. This is his motivation. This is his family and what he needs to do. And the fact that each chapter is broken up as a portion of a journey across the country to get to a destination, and then you throw flashbacks in periodically to show how the world got to where it is now compared to what most people think of as a superhero world. Like New York and all that has their own superheroes and stuff. And they give you the premise that all of the villains band together and took over and then divided the country up. So now it's like a post-apocalyptic survival superhero setting where the superheroes are on the back foot and are just trying to survive. And what will he have to do in order to survive on this journey while still keeping his oath that you will see here when these guys show up to demand the rent? You think, okay, he's Wolverine. He'll just mince these dudes apart. But it's not what happens. So
Ego, what was your, sorry to jump in, Shield Wall, but Ego, what was your thought when you saw this panel? Because someone who didn't read anything and didn't really know what you're getting yourself into, I still love the first scene of the hillbilly Hulks.
Yeah, I didn't know what was going on. It looked extremely weird at the beginning, but I was
Because
like,
she has one on her teat. For anybody who can't see that panel on the right, she's that's the baby Hulk on her teat. Just so you guys all know, this is crazy.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't know what I was looking at, but I was like, yeah, the minute I saw her teeth and heard her talk, I was like, you know what? I know people like that, so I'm just gonna roll with this. But yeah, hillbilly Hulks, I'm rolling with it. That's fine.
Yeah.
You also know, getting into this, I mean, almost like, I know there's a parental warning on the back side of this, but as soon as you get into these panels, you are not reading a comic for young people. This is an adult story. It's presented as an adult story.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah.
And I'll try to jump around a little bit and not, and we're not gonna give away all the spoilers or anything like that, folks. I want you to enjoy that first experience and things like that. So basically, this is where we're going to get is Hawkeye showing up after he has a conflict. Wolverine basically has the conflict with the Hulks. He's all battered. Hawkeye shows up. He's partially blind, or he's mostly blind. He's got like a glaucoma.
He's got the glaucoma, yeah.
He's basically the Avengers that's left. And there's a fun nod to him being the one that survives, which I don't want to spoil because I think that is a nice nuance to really good writing. That's the nuance that I love so much. Is like in the audience or as the reader, like Hawkeye survives, like the dude with the bow and arrow survives. Like what? That doesn't make. And they trust me, folks. They'll get to it. And I think they did a great job doing that. Roman, did you have that thought too when the first time you read this? Like Hawkeye?
Oh yeah, it was it was odd because Hawkeye, his superpower is essentially his ability to hit anything. That's with anything, as it goes. But he's pretty much. I mean, that's the way it played out in the movies. Also, after a fashion, he's pretty much just the dude. So for him to be the one that made it through till the end here, it was funny, it was ironic, and it was really definitely solid writing. I also think, and this is just me where it works in my brain, that narration at the beginning of the comic should be coming from Hawkeye.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know that it ever, I think you ever get a narrator, but in my brain, it's Hawkeye doing that narration.
I can see that.
Again, Shield, while you were talking about Last of Us, talk about it almost on the nose. I feel stupid for not actually putting that 2 and 2 together. But again, it's not me, a video game guy, just only watching the show. But now that I look at these panels, I'm like, oh, this is so Last of Us. And it's like then it becomes like the cowboy road movie, like the Westerns. And I just did a video on The Searchers. So if anybody's ever watched The Searchers, this famous John Wayne film where, they get marauded, they get duped by the Indians, they get marauded, and the two girls are kidnapped, and John Wayne's like going to lead lead them out to go find them. And the premise of The Searchers is they actually are literally searching. And this movie kind of really I should have thought of whenever I was reading this book again. Like, oh man, yeah, this is, and you're right. You know what, Roman? I don't know. Maybe you guys, Ego, what do you think? Would this be a better TV show than a movie? Because it's like I don't know if we can get enough in there. Yeah,
this would have been a better animated movie for me. That's the one thing that I think Marvel struggles with. I don't know why, but this is the kind of mature. I mean, I guess, but I've never seen a mature Marvel animated movie, and like I think for them, this could have started. I don't really care about them doing the what ifs on there because it's like. I guess I get it. You're trying to do the multiverse, but seemingly closing a story that's going to be mature in nature, I think is what they're missing if they're trying to compete with DC in that front. Because I could see I've read books like this on the DC end, and I've even seen the animated versions of them to boot, and they're still pretty great. But I just thought that this would be a better animated movie to watch and listen to. I think it'd have been a cheaper production to do with the higher upside compared to the Logan movie that wound up coming out, especially after I read this. I wound up seeing the Logan movie, and then I read this, and I was even more upset after I read it because of the movie that they gave us.
Yeah, and again, I think that they would cheat and go, well, that's not universe 807,128. That's universe 400 and something. I mean, I didn't even look it up. I assume they actually applied numbers to all these things now because that's what they do. Let me ask you, Shieldwall, because I don't think you had read this or anything. Did you even know that Spider-Man had a buggy?
Growing up in the 80s, I remember he had it was like a little dune buggy thing. Like a 70s dune buggy with a little roll bar, and it had like the rounded edges and stuff. I do remember that. I think it had like a parachute or like wings it could glide with or something. But am I thinking of the cartoon or the comic book? from the
Nothing was in the
70s.
comic book. You had
Yeah,
all sorts of variations. In
yeah,
the comic
yeah,
book. They would
yeah. He
constantly
had a-
tweak its design, stuff like that. But I thought it was funny that they would include something like this, and they never address it. Maybe I'm wrong, but correct me, guys. Rowan, do they ever address how Hawkeye gets it?
They do.
Yes.
Yes.
They do.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
Yeah,
do.
it's I'm not going to tell you when. It's pretty late in the book.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
When you figure out why he has this thing, and it's
Okay.
funny though. It's another one of
Yeah.
those.
Another one of
They
the comical
do
parts.
get some nice humor in this book.
They do.
It's not, but it's the kind of humor you would expect in a story like this, in the buddy road movie kind of thing. Oh, the map! I love the
Yeah.
map. The map makes me so happy.
That
I
was
can't
great.
even play it.
Yeah.
The map lets you keep context for each
Yeah,
story. You can kind of see where things are, so it's a little easier to understand what they're doing, what their objective is, and keep pace with the story. And you can also, each town that they go to, you can equate it with a modern day city, so you have a
Mhm.
template to compare. This is what it looks like now versus what it should look like, and you'll be able
Right.
to see those different things. And yeah, I think this would be better suited as either an animated movie or a animated TV series, because you could do so much more. You could do live action TV with it, and I think it would still work. I don't know if it would be. It's too much to make into one movie.
Way too much. Yeah.
Yeah, to make into a movie.
Yeah, you would have to sacrifice too much
Mhm.
for time. Otherwise, you have a 6 hour film. It would it's actually like more like an hour and a half read.
Right, right. Whereas you
I
can
mean, I
make
would love to
each.
see it on the big screen, though. I mean, that would be fantastic. But I think I think a small screen adaptation would be better. And I have to go again with the giant but. It also has to be accurate. If you stray,
Yes.
this doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room as far as the story goes. If you
No.
change too many elements of this story, it loses all of its heart, all of its meaning, and then it just becomes another, old guy, basically what you said, Shieldwall, an old gunslinger story. It becomes another one of those, just gets lost. This story doesn't deserve that. The story deserves to stand out for what it is.
Right. Also, I think if they start swapping characters around, it also affects the story, because there are certain people that are the way they are in the book, and if you change them for reasons, I think it impacts the story negatively.
Indeed.
Agreed. So we have and again, this is that previously on moment and the map. And as you can see very briefly, it'll be more noticeable as you go along with some of the later books, folks. But you can see that it moves from Sacramento to San Francisco. It's like the highlighted red here. It's a little bit more prominent. And they're in, quote, Hulkland, which is formerly Abomination's territory. And you can read the map that talks about. And what is great is they kind of explain most things, but every now and again they just don't explain anything. They just kind of
That's great
Nope.
too.
they just keep
That was
going.
awesome.
And
Yeah.
allow that. And that's where I think that's why I was so disappointed as somebody who did read what Bendis's miniseries was, whatever. It's like, well, we didn't stay in Earth 807, 120. Like, we could have just told more of these stories and just flushed it all out and had a good fun time. But no. Okay, so you're an issue or so in. Ego, you said you read this in like an hour or so, and it is a really fast read.
It is.
What are you thinking as we're like an issue or so in, as things start to unpack itself a little bit, and you can see kind of how crazy and also how bloody, and spoiler alert, Mark Millar does not hold back. Mark Millar,
No.
I don't know when the pivot point. If I had to ask questions, I don't know if he'd let me ask him this, but I'd be like, what was the point where you had the FU money, where you could just do what you wanted to do and you didn't care, Mark Millar? Because you've always seemed this way. Why? How did you do that? Because so many of them are not like that. I don't understand, but how did he do it? So what was in your brain, Ego, watching this craziness unfold?
I mean, I think the thing that really got me was the fact that all of the all of the art for the close-up shot is incredibly detailed. It's like almost down to Hawkeye's hair.
Yeah.
So I was like, it's like it draws you. And usually, sometimes when they do the close-up shots with some comic books, the art looks worse. Like, it looks great when they're panning out, but the minute they try to do a close-up, you can see all the flaws in the art. But I mean, it was incredibly detailed, and then so was the dialogue that went along with it. So the fact that I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, okay, that's while they're driving, they're having a discussion. It felt very kinetic the entire movie until it made you stop specifically for this type of dialogue. It was a sense of action. It was very kinetic. And even though it seemed very dark at times, you didn't really lose the sense of we're on an adventure with a man that says, I'll never do this again. And the guy that's like, yeah, sure, pal. And so it actually pulled you up when it seemingly got a little bit dark with Wolverine's flashbacks and him saying that I'm not the guy that I used to be. So, in that, I got a sense of that one issue in. And so I was like, okay, now I'm really hooked. Let's see where this goes.
I'm skipping a little bit because I didn't want to spoil because certain characters kind of come in.
Actually,
and
Ego,
you have
I want to follow up on something that he said. You said it never lost its motion, and that is a really good description of this. Yeah. You feel like this is rolling in front of you. You don't feel like you're turning the pages. You feel like you're watching this happen, which is just so, it's very dynamic. That's a great description, Ego.
Yeah, thank you.
I agree. Steve McNiven does the art. Steve McNiven is just beautiful. All of his work. I've never really had major problems with anything of his. I will not pretend that I've read all of it, but I definitely would love to see more of his work. He's done good stuff. I'm trying to skip through some things. Oh, here's another great close up of Hawkeye. And you can see those cataracts. His eyes are just completely glossed over.
Oh yeah.
Man, this scene was so good.
Beautiful.
As soon as the arrows started flying, my jaw hit the floor in the first one. I was like, oh, this is going to be that kind of book. Okay, got it. And it was that scene blew me away. I was just floored by the action that took place, how it took place. I was just thrilled. They
do such a fun job of explaining away a little bit. Like, all right, so I'm just going to say one of my big pet peeves with John Wick 4 was Donnie Yen's character, that he's blind, and it was so over the top with how skilled he was. And I'm like, in this book, Hawkeye explains how he doesn't see and he's still able to do some things. That's all fair. I needed. That's all I need. They have a little moment in John Wick, and then they abandon it completely, and he does more absurd things completely through magic. But here with Hawkeye, you totally get, this is why he's able to do that. Because Logan's like always chiming in, like he's like handicapped, right? He's always chiming in at Hawkeye, like, you're not even capable. I'm fine. Here's why. And I'm like, okay, this is brilliantly done.
At least in Rogue One, his character uses the Force. That's how he was able to see while he was blind and do all this incredible stuff. And here it's explained. To go back a little bit to the art, I think the art style is really good. They pay a lot of attention to the close-ups. But even the long shots, the art is well done. They took time to do this. And the story is so good that even if you were just reading this as a book without the art, I think it would still be a very good book. I was just thinking about that. Like, the art really adds to it artistically, and it lets you envision things a lot better. But I still think this could be like a novella or something, like a little small, like short story.
It could be a novelization of this.
Yeah, novelization, right?
Yeah, that would work. I could see that.
Yeah, and
see that would make money. See, they don't do that anymore. They don't want to do the things. They don't want to keep this amazing graphic novel in print for themselves. So it drives the market up, and we all have to pay like $30-$40 for our first print, things like that. So I won't spoil again how things keep moving. and why certain towns are called certain things. I'm trying to hold back a few of the spoilers. I think all that's great. So I do want to show this frame because I think this is part of what we talked about earlier. So when we have a flashback, something is prompting him to flash back to that time, the time that we talked about, right? When the villains attack. So you get these moments. Roman, speak a little bit to the panel says a lot, and yet there's not a lot.
No, and it doesn't need to. All you need to know that he is in pain. And he wanted, I mean, you see the flashback and you can make your own impressions from what you see. It's like he wanted it to end. But he's Wolverine, of course. So it can't end. And he wanted to, and I mean, he wanted to hurt because of the event. It's just, and it's such a simple panel, but it in context of the book, you feel what he's feeling at that moment. You see the look on his face, and then this is what's going through his head, and you understand the man he's become.
Right. Look at that left panel, just that right there with the lighting and the way his eye looks. He's looking at his hands.
Yeah, he's just
right.
Yeah.
And
he's lost.
This whole scene right here plays into those ancient stories of somebody that asks for immortality and then gets it and then can't end it because their life has become bad, but because they're immortal. So it begs the question, do you really want to be immortal? Do you want to live forever? But in his case, because of his healing factor, he can't end it.
Ego, what was some of your thoughts when you get to some? Because this sequence, there's no dialogue. It's just just these 3 panels. I was taken to the opening beach scene of Saving Private Ryan. I was taken through people that had survived through a Pearl Harbor or just World War I type scenes. It's just it's just so beautifully done in a comic book about Wolverine. You know what I mean? Well, what are some of your thoughts with this page in particular?
I really loved it. I mean, I wished a lot more mediums would use the whole waking PTSD panel instead of just trying to show that they're asleep and then they go into the dream and it's a nightmare and they wake up from it. Instead we just got the guy staring. He flashes back 2 panels and then we're back to present day. And you're like, wow, no matter what he does, sleeping or waking, it's always going to be there. So it again keeps you interested because it's still moving, even if it's just this is a freeze frame, but even in the freeze frame, the 2 panels are still showing action in a freeze frame, which I've never really seen that being used purposefully and artfully. And so to see that and to get that whole thing in 3 panels was a really great thing that they were able to do.
Absolutely. And that shows you that the artist and the author understand life this book is a lot more adult than what most people would think for a comic book, because comic books are for kids in some people's minds, but it's not adult it's more adult in a violent way, but not in a raunchy way, but a more thoughtful, it hits harder if you've lived life longer. You're not just like a 14-year-old kid reading this. If you're a 30-year-old reading it, it hits you a lot harder because of your life experiences that you've already had. And that shines through in the writing and the art.
Yeah, the question of mortality that we've all been talking about, I think, is at the forefront of this entire story, and it never stops. The foot is on the gas the entire time. So we're a little over halfway. So I'm gonna, if you don't want spoilers, I don't know how we haven't convinced you to go buy this book and read it if you have not. So if you do not want things spoiled, now you kind of have to come back and find out. You can see our reaction to some stuff now, because now I don't want to not take advantage of having these gentlemen here with me. Guys, I just look at this. So, but if you are at home, don't want to watch that part. There you go. There, you've had your warning. You've had your warning. I don't have a spoiler beeper thing. I'm not doing all that.
It's a lot of work.
So I reread this, and I got to this page, and I you know how it is when you haven't read something in a long time, and then when you do, it still kind of hits you the same way, but it also like, oh crap, oh yeah, this was the scene. Oh jeez, WTF.
Oh, yeah.
Mark
man.
Millar, WTF, Mark Millar. Like I couldn't believe I saw it. I saw it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember now. Oh my gosh, I can't believe he teased me. Like they survived, and then we do this to them. Like you've got to be effing like, oh my gosh.
Yes, they have a very short shelf life.
They got to be like they're 50, 60 years old, and then we have like this.
I mean, this is one of the, and I remember I said I had a couple of issues with the book. They're they're this big. My problem in part is that 50-year thing. Because Hawkeye is basically a regular dude. I mean,
he'd be like 70, so it seems ridiculous.
Right. He would be like older than it would. I mean, it would. But of course, we don't. That's all. I mean, in my brain, I'm working this out. We also don't know how old everybody was when the event happened. Where were these people? Because we don't know. As far as their prime or whatever. How far along?
If we treat them as just being 20, they'd be 70. Daredevil, Punisher, and Hawkeye shouldn't look like this if they're 70. So I think that you're right in the sense of the age, the time jump might have, if they shortened it some, I think we probably would be a little bit more
25 years would have been the same thing.
Even 20 is fine. I'm fine if it was 20 years. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
That's fair.
Certain things would have made more sense with a shorter timeline as far as this type of character goes. Because Punisher is a regular dude. Daredevil, aside from his agility and his,
he's
sonic
human though. He's
stuff.
human.
Yeah, he ages like everybody else.
Right. None of them have any powers that
Logan is the only one.
Right, that slow their aging or anything like that. Well, unless they've taken like some kind of super serum or something that we don't know about.
But I love the Velociraptors.
Shieldwall, are you familiar with Savage Land? Did this even make sense at first? Because they at least explain it. But did it even get because I remember I got to this panel and I thought to myself, oh, I can't wait to see if somebody who's never read this book gets to this panel and be like, what in the name of holy is happening to Punisher? And you're waiting for a fight. You're waiting for something to completely go bonkers. No, Shieldwall, what was your response to the shenanigans? Because it definitely does not go that way.
Because the world is so upside down, like previously when they got to, since we're doing a little bit of spoilers here, when they got to San Francisco, there were like these mole people coming out of the ground and stuff. And and it alluded to that being like a self-defense mechanism for the planet. It is what they were guessing. So who knows what kind of weird experiments Dr. Doom did to make these things or where they came from. So it was easy for me to be like, oh, they got velociraptors. Okay, cool. You know what I mean? Like in my head, I immediately thought somebody transported them here from another planet out of another dimensional gate. They created them in a lab. It actually didn't really matter to me, like where they came from. It was just cool that they were there. And because maybe you'll find out, maybe you won't. And to go back just real quick to that statement that I was making before about if you were 30, you could understand this more than if you were maybe a 14-year-old reading it. The flip side of that is you read this when you're 14 and you understand it better when you think back on it when you're 30. And it gives you a guideline of like, you're exposed to it then so that you understand things that happen in your life later on that you could connect back to it and say, this is what the author meant when they presented this story this way. And which is why when I was a kid, or we were all kids, we would read comics and we'd say, this person is heroic and here's why. And this is how we might want to lead our lives to be better, to be more like that person, Captain America, whoever. And so that's how that can affect a person, which is what I think is the core of good comics. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, how it can affect you. Yeah.
And so it just keeps going because he's trying to break out. This turns out to be his daughter, Spider Woman, who has like enormous boobs.
Yeah, there's one
Her
panel.
first act is to grab the sword and decapitate the new Kingpin.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, Mark Millar. By the way, if you're not reading anything from Millarverse in the new comic book arena, that's among the new stuff you should be reading, like Nemesis or Nemesis Reloaded and some of that kind of stuff. Hardcore, just like this. If you think Mark Millar has changed, I am telling you, he is more free than he was even then. Like, he adds the nudity and the profanity that he wasn't allowed to do at Marvel. He does it in his own books. He's like, screw this, I'm doing my own thing.
Also, if you look at this panel here, that is not a sword. That is a shotgun. She's knocking his head off with.
With a shotgun, yeah.
Yeah, that's how strong she is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's insane. This is just beautiful. And I will say there's a great moment, and I loved it so much because she says, the control panel is 31 inches to the left of my voice. And he's like, okay, gotcha.
Got it.
And bam, done. Okay, I'm good.
Well, also when they show up in the buggy, and because the bad guys are basically giving her the talking to, blah blah blah. You think someone's gonna come and get you? Da 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 da. And then the buggy's like boom into the building, and she's like, "Yeah, that'd be Dad." So it's just like, I knew Dad was gonna come up. I enjoyed that. It's a nice father moment.
Yep.
And then again, like a father moment, no desire to like, it's just nothing goes as you think it is. She's not doing this to escape.
Right.
She's doing this to be in control. Like, oh, I forgot that too. Oh man. And it's just like it goes sideways. And you're like, holy cow. I can't believe
see that coming.
Did not see that coming.
But I would say is like, well, Hawkeye was like, well, you know what? That kind of makes sense. He's like, I never envisioned her a superhero. I was like, she seems like she would kind of be a villain. And so it's like, well, no, your kid. So although he's surprised, he's like, you know what? I kind of called it, I guess. And I'm bearing the brunt of that. So this is actually my favorite scene of the entire book. Like this whole sequence here of the double cross and then finding out and them trying to escape was actually my favorite part. Just because Hawkeye called it, even kind of in passing, to his third ex-wife or second ex-wife, whichever one it was.
She is the offspring of him and his third wife.
Third wife. Yeah, third wife. Yeah.
And the other thing is that it's still his daughter, so he helps her anyway.
Right.
Yep. And then we're back on the road again. She's in charge now. And she actually orders them to go after them.
Also,
and then we have dinosaurs that are in chase.
Yes.
Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so much fun. Like it's just so insane. I think you guys are right too. I really wish they would do, not in hindsight. Again, my biggest concern is because whenever I tell them to do mature audiences or do this book justice, they think that means they can start cussing like sailors, and that's what they do, which is not what I mean. I mean, just adapt the book like it is.
Right.
The way they adapted The Dark Knight Returns, where they did like 2 hour-and-a-half, like a part 1, part 2, I think that's probably the best way to do something like this, is to get something that's real tight, real fast, a lot of action, a lot of blood. Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah, that's my compromise. So, let's see. This it just moves so fast because now we end up in this crazy sequence.
Unexpected scene after the scene you just came to.
Yeah,
you were suddenly thrust into this.
Yeah, dealing with the mole people and Hawkeye trapped under the Jeep, the spider buggy, and there's dinosaurs up top looking for them.
They were all the
this
rage
is the
for a while.
Electroville. Yeah, I didn't quite understand why the Baxter Building, Manhattan skyscraper, would be where Electroville is. Like, so when I get to the map, I got to look at that again. I didn't quite get it, but I do like the fact
near New York.
Yeah, it would not make any sense that it would be there. So, and it's something that doesn't get addressed. Like, did Galactus just pick up the whole freaking building or something? I mean, we don't know. They took out Loki too, and then there's this Venom thing that's sort of out there as well.
That looked really cool. Like it's just out there hunting in the wastelands or whatever. Yep.
Creepy.
Yeah, and we have the skull.
That was
Yeah.
that was cool. That was cool. That was I like that.
And we're in Iowa, right? So we're in Des Moines. So we're actually in a real town. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why on earth would the freaking Baxter building be there? And then, by the way, we get a flashback. We get a little cut moment. And when we get more details on this one, we have a little Mr. Sinister. We have Omega Red. We get this is a Deathstrike, Lady Deathstrike. So we get a little bit like, oh, man. And I got to be honest, I was trying to immerse myself into like noob mentality of forgetting the twist. It's like, oh man, he took out some of the big hitters too. That would make sense. That would make sense why they're not in charge, right?
This scene was great.
It was nice.
The movies have done a pretty good job of this sometimes, where I think Hugh Jackman pulls this off pretty well. Of them, he's struggling not to he's struggling not to kill someone in a bar fight. Like they have tried to pull that off reasonably well.
And this is where we finally get the reveal.
Yeah. So we are getting close to where we want to be. And again, on our map here, we have our little blow up. We're getting Doom's Lair. So we're in Des Moines. We're in his area of the country. And I love Dwight's Toll, Mutant Forbidden Quarters. And it's like funny because Dwight's Toll just stands out because it doesn't make any sense relative to some of the other stuff. You're like, what are we talking about? And it just sort of comes and goes in a moment. But we get our here's what actually happened moment. And we kind of go through all of this. Now, for you guys that hadn't really read this before, what is your thoughts as we're kind of shaping up through some of this kind of stuff?
Like when we're reading it, or like what happens with
like
the
when you're
reveal
reading
of
it, like you're sort of like a first impression, because I think that's the one thing I think is very interesting with this story, because it's pretty rare that we can have a story where we can actually, get a good twist, get a good, you know what I mean? Because I was buying into this. I was buying into, oh yeah, it would make sense to use villains that everybody wasn't prepared for. Like it would be good for the X-Men and not know how to deal with, Shocker and Doc Ock and Strife. And so it's a nice blend of villains that would, potentially have a good chance of taking down the X-Men if they all teamed up.
I was gonna say that by the time I realized, like, why would you put these jabronis up against the Wolverine and Xavier school? By the time I was thinking about it, that's when the reveal hit me. So, and when we get to that, I'll go with my reaction at that point. But I was like, okay, well, Wolverine's doing what Wolverine does, and then I was like, why a bunch of jabronis, and then reveal? Like that was kind of the order in which it happened.
For me, it was it was cool to see like villains that you don't normally see Wolverine fight. You know what I mean? And they show up, and some of them are maybe a little more obscure to some people. But basically, from what I saw in there, he has to fight the Spider-Man villains for the most part. Is what it looked like to me.
It's a blend. It's a blend of Spider-Man villains and X-Men villains.
Okay. But the whole concept of we have more villains than heroes, and if we pair certain ones up, it's like kind of like a Yu-Gi-Oh card game kind of thing or something, where I've got this and I'm going to stack this card on top of it. It makes now I'm more powerful or whatever. But the twist to this whole thing was really I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
This was there's a quick line about it, about there's like 20 of us for every hero. Like we could just overpower most. And to be honest, and again, I think Roman, you've read it for sure. The Justice series that Kruger does with Alex Ross, the DC. It's like a play on the Super Friends with a Legion of Doom. They basically did the same premise. Like, look, if we put 3 of these people and we do this to Superman, we can do this. If we do this to Wonder Woman, we can do this. So it's a similar concept of, look, if we just mix things up, if we trade them out, we could. And then the twist happens, and you're like, oh, what? And it's like, wait a minute, this isn't Bullseye.
That was a big OS moment for me. I was like, oh no. And then as soon as you realize it, though, everything becomes crystal clear as to why Logan is the way Logan is. It takes any question, any doubt about his motivations, or why he doesn't want to bring the claws out again. You're like, okay, I get it.
Right.
I get it.
Yeah, Logan, stop, please. Why are you doing this? You're supposed to be our friend. He's like, huh? And then it just changes. You hear, oh dear. And then you have the reveal He looks down and it's Jubilee. And you're like, what is happening? Oh, it's Mysterio.
And that's to me, that's the worst part. I was like, man, he got duped by Mysterio.
God.
Like back when I was a kid, this dude was like a total joke of a character.
No, there's some great Mysterio stuff that's done well. And I got to be honest, not modern comics, but, like the 2000s and stuff. We kind of started to get, Kevin Smith brought Mysterio into it as well. And it's like, oh, wait, there's some stuff with Mysterio that we could do that would be interesting. I think it's the one reason people were so mad about the movie, because Mysterio was sort of wasted into this weird, cheesy, cheeky, media manipulator instead of this, because this was crazy that he was able to dupe Wolverine like this. And you look around the room and it's just mayhem and bloodshed and chaos everywhere. It's him screaming in the corner. And if you remember the scene, as he's going around, he's crying out at them, right? Because he's feeling like they're lost, right? So when you're first reading it, you're thinking that he's protecting people or whatever, that he's crying out, he's yelling out Cyclops, he's yelling out Storm. Where is everybody? Well, is he also crying out because that's actually who he's killing? It's beautiful. All right, Ego, what happened to your brain when this happened?
Oh, I got up and walked away for a few minutes. Not gonna lie.
I need a minute. Yeah.
I did. I was reading this in a hotel too. So like I just had to get up and just walk down from the 4th floor down, just stare at the sun for a little bit. I wasn't prepared for that. It was rough. And I was mad that I got my question answered. I got what I was asking for, but then I was mad that I got it. So yeah, it was a payoff that I didn't know that they were going to give me, but it's just okay. Once I read it, you know what? I wouldn't want to fight anybody after that either. If you got if a seemingly B-list jabroni such as Mysterio was that easy to dupe someone, and everyone called me an animal, and I tried my best to use my powers to the best of my ability, but then I still acted like an animal, and I killed 40 people that were my friends, I'd be out too. Like, don't call me Wolverine, don't call me nothing but Logan or James Howlett. Don't even say that name around me.
And they address it perfectly when they say Mysterio made him look and feel and even smell different. And I'm like, see, that's the trick. They used because this is the thing with one of the comic books that I always loved was a standalone comic called Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe. It's a great little story, except for 2 problems: how he kills Bruce Banner the Hulk and how he kills Wolverine. They wouldn't work. It doesn't make sense. And it's like, okay, so in this story, what they do is, all right, well, how could we deal with Wolverine? We can't really kill him. So what could we do? Well, what if Mysterio duped him? You know what I mean? Because Mysterio, he wouldn't run into Mysterio. Like when would he have crossed paths with Mysterio?
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a great twist that works on so many levels. Yeah. And then they discuss it. And he just,
now we're back to the scene you start with, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And they covered all of the bases that a comic book nerd would know. It'd be like, well, he could smell the difference. So that's why they had to put that line in there. I doubt modern writers would have thought enough to put that in there from what I've seen.
Well, they definitely don't have editors. So the editors aren't going to catch it. Just so you guys know. If you have, spoiler alert on all my complaint videos, it's usually about the lack of editing. So, and then of course, Wolverine, this is exactly what you would expect Wolverine to do. It's like, well, I'll just take care of it myself. It's like, yeah, that's not going to happen, but it hurt. He's like, but it hurt. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Steve McNiven.
You can feel that scene, man.
Golly.
Oh.
And if you notice, this is really nerdy, but if you scroll down a little bit more, see how the train tie is, how you have one piece holding the wood down, and then the other piece going over the train tie to hold it down. So that's accurate. Yep. So that's the attention to detail.
Oh, okay.
That he has in this shot.
Well, he even cross hacks in different directions the shadow when he's lifted off the ground. So if you look at this, you have hashing that's going different directions.
Right. Yeah, because those little bumps are the gravel that it supports the the rails part.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine that we all now get what's going on, and then we'll go back to the story. By the way, we're going to go to Dwight's
Right.
Toll,
Yeah.
and you're like, "What is happening?" And it's like it's just great because it just happens.
Yeah,
And,
you get no explanation. for
Right.
this
You're like,
entire
how did
movie.
he get the little Ant-Man? Because that's Ant-Man's helmet,
Yep.
obviously. So how did he? Because and that's what he uses to mind control ants with.
Yep. He only asked for 80 cents.
That's it.
Yeah, not
And
an
he
even
found it.
dollar.
No.
Nope.
Yeah.
There's dinosaurs, they just drive past them like no big deal. And then
And
there's a
then-
Venom T-Rex. And he's all covered in like it's just like everything
that's
about
a
this just
good
makes
cover.
you want to read more. You're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. What is happening now? Like it's just so beautifully done.
And that's very true. Is that panel with the journey portion on it? It kind of gives you a little bit of what's coming next, but also you're excited. Ooh, look where they're going. Well, I wonder what's going to happen next, and it gets crazier and crazier as you go. And then like Doom's Lair, you're like, okay, when are we going to see? Is Doom going to make an appearance? You know, and who's the president?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's
Oh, yeah.
referring to the
Yeah.
president. You don't,
Yep.
you're in your head, you're kind of making guesses.
Yeah.
But then you get that reveal as well, and it's also very good.
Then this part here, I was like, wait a second, this thing had guns on it like that the entire time? I was like, what are you guys doing? Maybe they had limited ammo or something. I don't know.
And I will say I just enjoyed the fact that it's like out of the blue, especially when if you don't know, I don't know, did you know who everybody is with all of this? Because we just start dropping Black Bolt in
Emma
and stuff
Frost,
like that.
Black Bolt.
Right.
For some of them, like no, like the woman with the blue lips, I was like, I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, Emma Frost. Yeah, she has more clothes on than she does in a lot of her comic books.
That
but
is true.
It's so this is really, really interesting. And I will say again, Mark Millar knows exactly what he's doing and keeps the nerds happy, right? Your first impression is like, this is Emma? Like she should have aged. She shouldn't still be this hot lady. Like this doesn't make any sense. But she's basically like, think of a malicious version of Jean Grey, basically, right? That's a very generic synopsis of it. And then, but I will say, I love how Black Bolt aged. Like they didn't try to play that up. Like very, very nice.
Nope, looks like a raisin.
Yeah, he looks bad, which is good. And it's like, you're Emma, yeah. And that really looks like what is her name that played her in the movies? Jones.
I'm blanking too on this one.
Really just looks just like her. Oh man, forget her name. In January Jones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, her name is January Jones, the actress that plays her. They really drew her like that. So anyway, we'll bounce ahead quite a bit here. They fix it for you, and then we just basically get what Shieldwall's talking about. We just get an appearance of Doom, and you're just like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? We don't know. They just keep going on, and then we find out why is it called Pym Falls? Oh,
Literal.
Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, I have to admit, one of the other got me again moments was the Hammer Falls with the Thor hammer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it hit me so hard.
Worship. That was
Man.
which is fascinating because the regular people, they want the heroes to come back, but the heroes aren't coming.
No.
Also, I can't remember. Did they explicitly explain how he was defeated?
Nope.
I don't think they do.
Mm-mm.
No. Yeah, you don't get. It's just like with Loki. You don't know. You just kind of get that there was a big battle, and somehow him and the Baxter Building ended up in the middle of Iowa.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which again lends itself to if they had just left this universe in its own universe, those could be some very interesting stories that you could tell. Knowing they have these negative endings, like it would be fine. You could do it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So then we kind of get into, we're going to have some fun dealing with what the Capitol looks like. Yeah. If you didn't catch the skull reference at Mount Rushmore, yeah, it is Red Skull. Anyway, so the super serum is what's on the table. That's what they're going for. and it's just basically a shield maneuver, and then it kind of goes sideways.
And
because-
this
yeah.
character here looks like a failed Austrian painter.
He does.
Yes,
He's
yes, he does. I don't know why you thought you could trust that.
Well, who would believe he works for Shield if he looks like that, and you have Red Skull as the president? That was actually
So
like
it all,
one of
it
the
all
other
makes
things.
sense after that. Yeah.
Exactly.
But it goes sideways, and down goes Hawkeye.
Again,
So-
didn't see that coming. That took
Mm-mm.
me by surprise.
Yep.
Okay. Oh,
Yep.
man.
Look at that. Look at that. My goodness.
Yep. Steve McNiven, man.
Terrible
He's
and
bringing
beautiful.
it.
And
And then you
this.
see this.
Ah!
And I,
Weird.
even though I knew it was Red Skull in the last issue, it's like somehow my brain actually went, "Oh, they're not putting Marvel zombies in this, are they?" I literally, my
No.
stupid brain does things like that. I don't know why.
I totally, when I saw that shot, I was like, "Oh, is that zombie Captain America?"
Yeah.
It-
I did too. For
or,
2 seconds, yeah.
or yeah, like an Iron Maiden album cover.
Yes, yeah, it's Eddie. All right. So anyway, then we get to just this incredible flashback
Yep.
with
The only thing wrong with this scene, and if this is another minor pick, is that it's Bucky Cap. It's not Steve Rogers Cap.
Oh yeah.
It was that era, so that's why you got that.
Yeah, that's true.
I know, like I said, it's just that much, but it would have had, to me as a reader, a lot more impact had it been the Steve Rogers version.
And then the trophy room.
I love the trophy room. This is actually my favorite scene in the book. Is this sequence that takes place? I love this so much.
Is that
It is. He's freaking crazy as well, which is also great. You know, wearing the skins of your enemies is what is what they used to do.
is that Silver Surfer surfboard over there
Yes,
on the left?
Surfer. So this is
Wow.
Silver Surfer surfboard. This is the tattered cloak from Doctor Strange.
Yeah, okay.
Thor's helmet, Spidey's mask, Daredevil's down here. This is all Iron Man, Cyclops. This is half of a Vision head, a cut off thing's arm. This is the a bracelet and the chest piece from Captain Marvel. We can see more in a minute when it comes back around. This is the wearing of the mask. So here we have this is one wing from Falcon, Punisher's shirt and the guns. What else we have?
Moon Knight.
Yeah, Moon Knight is
that,
here. This is a Wolverine head. Go ahead.
That's Nightcrawler's tail, right? Underneath the Punisher's.
Whoa.
Yes.
I think you're
Punisher's
right. It is
Yeah.
Wow.
Kurt's tail.
Banner shorts.
Banner's pants.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in here. Yeah.
Why shouldn't I be allowed my eccentricities?
And McNiven doing Red Skull just makes me want to see more McNiven Red Skull. Because he's like, it's so believable without him being like icky. I don't know.
Right.
Also, that big piece of ship for the Fantastic Four with bullet holes in it, or is that from like their base or something?
I would assume that's from the building.
Yeah. Okay.
That's true.
So he has that as a trophy as well, like as a monument or something.
Oh, to the right of the Vision head was Iron Fist. That's Iron Fist right there.
Oh, yeah.
There's a beast head and torso. Like talk about like, yeah.
Stuffed and mounted him. Good Lord.
Yeah,
Did they
mounted
have a
him.
taxidermist do that? That's what I want to know.
Oof.
This is funny though. They don't realize who they have brought to Red Skull. They have no idea who this other old guy is.
This is Nova's helmet. I'm not sure what this is supposed to be though.
What's that hawk there? Or is that the Maltese Falcon?
Well, they're probably Falcon had a Falcon, so I assume that's what they're trying to do.
Oh, then they stuffed it. Oh, that's
Yeah.
messed up.
And I think this is supposed to be Cloak from Cloak and Dagger.
Dang.
Yeah. But then it just goes bonkers with him. It's just this. He's not even recognizable as Wolverine at this point. Just not even recognizable.
I love Skull though, because he's like, oh, this is unexpected. And he's monologuing. which is just wonderful. It's exactly what you would expect out of Red Skull. It's just brilliant.
He gets the upper hand at first. You know, he thinks he's going to hold his own against Wolverine for some reason. He locks himself in with him.
Whose sword is that? When I read this panel, I
Black Knight?
Black Knight's ebony
Okay.
sword. Yeah. And it would be like, and it would actually cut off his arm.
Oh.
Yeah, it definitely would cut off his arm because it's magic driven as well. So like it definitely would hurt Wolverine. I'm assuming Wolverine could pick it up and put his arm back on, but I mean, reality was it would actually hurt him.
This is so good.
Yeah.
Because Skull just doesn't expect him to go as far as he goes.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he still thinks it's the old days.
He doesn't think that. He just thought he was going to fight Wolverine. Wolverine starts using the shield. Well, now it's like the metaphor, and he knows he can't break the shield. Even the ebony sword's not going to break the shield.
Right, and he's wearing Cap's suit, and he's getting his butt kicked by Cap's shield. Right.
Mm-hmm. Almost like a new Captain America. It's like, you don't have the guts. He's like, oh, are you kidding me? Oh, yeah, that's what we get. Oh, Eagle has to go down to the first floor again. Got to go get some more ice.
Technically, he didn't pop his claws, though.
Did not have to. Yep, he did not.
So it just completely goes bonkers. He's trapped inside, and it's like, all right, what do I do to get out? And then it becomes nuts. He actually wears part of the Iron Man armor.
Again, that was a yell out loud while you're reading the comic book moment.
Yeah. It was like a cheer in a theater. Like if you're in a movie theater, you'd be cheering, right? Okay. Now, even though we're doing spoilers, I don't think I could bring it to myself to spoil the very end because it's that good. I just,
the end is brilliant. It's
because you still have to think to yourself. I don't know about anyone else. What were you guys thinking? Well, how is he going to kill Hulk? Like, there's Hulks. Like, how?
Well,
like,
honestly,
you're still trying to figure some of that out, right?
You're still. I mean, you're not even sure on the way back. You know, he's on his way back. He's racing to get back. Is he going to make it on time? What happens if all these things are going through your head as this scene is taking place, and you want to talk about grabbing the reader by the freaking cojones and pulling them along.
Yeah.
That flight back, 3,000 miles, 2,000 miles. You're getting the countdown of the distance. And then the suit starts talking to him because the power cells are dying. And he's like, just keep going. Keep going.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
wonderful.
And then just so everybody knows that Mark Millar's not going to hold back. He's going to make Steve McNiven draw some things that Steve McNiven never thought he was going to have to draw. Just so you know, it does deliver. If you wanted a rated R version of Comic Book Deck, you're going to get it in the final issue of this. It is insane. It's insane.
Well, definitely.
Yeah, because so much happens, and there's still another book. So much happens, and there's still another book. It's just amazing. It's such. Like I said, this is an underrated masterpiece of the comic book age.
Yeah,
no one really talks about Old Man Logan. They talk about Logan the movie. This far outshines that.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought this up because it definitely had me go back and revisit it, and I had a chance to introduce it to you guys, and that's awesome. So, before we get too much, I don't want to get too far away from it. Roman, let's see your action figures real quick before we kind of go around the horn. And
all right, these came out a couple of years ago. These are the Marvel Legends versions of these characters. So here we have Old Man Hawkeye, and again, the detail on the figure is just outstanding. You get a couple different heads with this, but this is the most comic book accurate version of the head. So, and then there's this one, and I'm going to try not to mess things up here because it tends to not cooperate with me, and that's okay. We'll take our time. We'll be slow. We have. Oh no! And of course, it happened. All right. I'm just going to show you the figure in the other part because otherwise. So here we have.
Wow.
Old Man Logan. Really nice detail here, and you see his arm is clutched there, and it's like, well, why is his arm clutched? That's peculiar. It's because you get of course, now he's off balance. Oops. Oh no, my screen's not going to let me show it. I guess it's going to remain a mystery. I'm sorry. Because
Oh, that's right, because you have a
his
green
little head's
screen
going
up.
to disappear.
Put it in front of your chest. Can you put it in front of your chest, or will it
No,
let you do it?
it still goes right. Well, you can
Oh, it
almost
goes.
see it.
You can almost see the green baby Hulk.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah, he's in
Hulk
cool.
baby. So,
That's
but
awesome.
yeah, it was a really fun set. So that's the two figures from the Old Man Logan comic, and it was it's Marvel Legends. It was like $40 or whatever, but it was money that it was well spent.
Well spent.
Awesome. Final thoughts, Shieldwall. Let's start with you, my brother.
So for anybody that does go out and read this, the ending for me was pretty satisfying. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give it away, but it was really good. This is a great book or series from start to finish. The art's good, the story's good. The beats, it doesn't like lag or kind of stutter like some will, where it'll get boring or something in the middle or whatever. It's just kind of off balance enough to be quirky and interesting. It's a very basic story if you think about it in the way that stories are told. There's a lot of movies that parallel this, but the way the story is told, with like the just wackiness of it, in some places, dinosaurs and mole men and stuff, it's really good. I enjoyed reading it, and so I recommend it for everybody that gets a chance to read it. I think you'll be surprised, especially if you are reading modern comics, anything that came out 2018 post. Compare it to that, and you'll see why it's so good.
I'm gonna add the caveat of at least 2015, and it's probably earlier than that, but definitely 2015. So he's being generous, in my opinion. It's okay. This is the 2008 era. So for those of you looking for the dates on this is 2008, 2009. This is they spent about 6-7 years before they tried to start screwing this up a little bit, and then they kind of screwed up the whole universe. And then the old Man Logan series though isn't horrible. But then they do these weird things like do now. They just by the way, we're gonna change artists. He draws completely different. He's gonna use a lot of pinks and purples. We're gonna do this for 3 stories, and we'll come back and pick up the story where we left off. And you're like, okay, I'm glad I didn't spend my money buying those 3 issues, because I'd be really ticked off right now. That's kind of how I feel about a lot of modern comics. So it started back then.
Fair.
Right. And then, like I said, I was being generous with 2018 was when it really fell
it dumped
off.
the shark. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was getting bad before that, but that's when it really took a nosedive.
Yeah. What about you, Ego? Final thoughts?
Not to give anything away, but the reasoning that happens after this for what happens was the second best part of the story to me. And that's why I was like, I would understand that anybody would say that. Like, I'm doing this for this reason. You're like, wait, that's it? And they'd be like, yeah, that's really it. Like, okay. I wish that they would lean more into that with the villains in general. Not to give anything away, but I really wish they would do that, and not some tragic reasoning to where I have to see myself in your shoes. Like, no, I did it because this reason. That's it.
Yes.
And you're like, wow, that's kind of gangster right there. And I don't want to say any more because it would be given away. But reading this I already don't like the movie Logan because it didn't make sense and it was sad for no reason. And again, I was even more upset after I read this, because I get it if you're, I guess what Fox did Logan. They had the rights at that point, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay, I know that you might not have the rights to all these characters, but for the story I just read, you could have found somebody to resemble this story that I'm reading, and at least give me a sense of it's an adventure. It's moving. Like Logan was really like, they say jokingly, Florida is God's waiting room, right? I felt like watching Logan was just like, the movie was like somebody's just ready to die. I know it's going to be, it's just a slow creep to death. This book, I didn't know what was going to happen. Even though I'm watching older people, it's still saying that anything could happen. And I really wish they would have stuck with that, because it was really great to have it in this book.
You're really bringing up something I really hadn't really thought of, because Matt, Common Idiot, has challenged me a little bit on doing some videos of something where my opinion has really radically changed.
Okay.
Something that I really liked and now I don't like, and vice versa. And I think I'm going to have to put Logan in that category, because my first impression was very positive, but I know that I did not like the rewatch, and I don't own a copy.
Oh,
And I'm
okay.
like, maybe I'll do a rewatch and then do a video with him about that. Kind of like that progression of how something deteriorates on you. Because I really agree with what you're saying, Ego, too. And definitely when you talk about this comic book as source material, because I definitely tried to divorce myself from that to try to at least try to enjoy the movie for what it was.
Yeah.
But again, like everything else, the more time you have, I think I saw someone on Twitter commenting about what came up a little bit with Guardians, and then it's come up with Flash. It's like, well, my first impression was I liked it here, and then as I thought about it, and I thought about it, then I might have seen it a second time, and you're like, welcome to my world. Welcome to my world. So awesome. Thank you guys for doing that. Roman, my friend, thanks for this recommend. What is your general? Because I'm with you with Kingdom Come being the premier alternate future book that's done just perfectly. We both kind of came away with, we had a very brief talk, and we're like, this like literature. This isn't that far behind though, brother.
No, I would agree. I mean, this is definitely top 5 of this type of comic, graphic novel. Easy for me because it's a and it's not hard. It's not hard to do this thing. This is a classic story. This is the classic story of we'll call it disgraced or fallen hero finding his way back. It's like the hero's journey. It's not, not dissimilar in many ways, except he's been there and he's lost it all, and now he needs to find his way home. Again, it's a classic story, and that's why I think it hits on so many levels. But as Ego and Shieldwall pointed out, this also does keep you on your toes because of the way they do it. Old story, new twists. It's brilliant. And that artwork, I can't believe they would have tried doing another series with, I guess, not available, didn't want to do it, too much money, whatever, another artist. Because after this, anything else is going to be a downgrade. And again,
it has a completely different feel, and I think they've tried to give it like I don't want to get into the whole conversation, but I want to piggyback on something you said, because I think it's very true. Because over the course of the last year or so, I've picked up and reread like the Crisis on Infinite Earth, both versions. Well, there's 3 Secret Wars. There actually was a Secret Wars 1 and 2, and then there's the new Secret Wars. And I'm thinking to myself, all of that stuff is so hard to recommend to people because it's so convoluted. There's so many characters. They don't explain really power structures or anything like that. This is a book, I think, Shieldwall, you said it so well. It's like, I kind of need to know who everybody is, but if I don't, there is some stuff there. You can pick up some breadcrumbs and still kind of go along the way, even though maybe, like you said, I didn't know who Emma Frost was, but it's explained enough that she's doing this. I don't know who she was, but at least I can follow the story. Yeah. There wasn't really a question in there, was it? Sorry about
that. But
my brain does that. It's not just Roman that does that. My brain does that too.
To my point is that if you knew, because most of that stuff is in the public sphere enough to even the most basic normie that has at least gone and saw the movies in the theater will be able to easily follow this. Like I said, I didn't know who she was because she's not like a very big primary character, but it didn't really matter. Her scenes made sense without that context, and also to the point of this being a kind of like the type of story it is classic. I honestly think that you could go in a time machine and go back to like ancient Greece and tell this story to somebody, and they would totally understand what was happening, the motivations, all that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe not the dinosaurs and stuff, but if you could tell this story in so many different ways, but it had the same through line, the same basic plot. And if you go back that far, you can find stories just like this. So I think that's why it's so appealing.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's all good stuff. All good stuff. Folks, I hope you, I don't know what you can do. I don't know how to get a higher recommend. And we did spoil a lot of stuff kind of in that second half, but we saved that final bit for you. Because I have to be honest, you're going to want to come back and leave some comments here when you're like, OMG,
yes.
WTF. Pick your poison on my little PG-13 version, because if it was a flaccid channel, you guys would just be like, you gotta be.
True.
Yeah, it is insane how far. And I have to be honest, he couldn't even sell this. Like there's no way the people at Marvel have the spine. And I think this is 100% of the reason why this is not in print. They don't want to do it. This should be a cash cow on the printer with some of these things. Someone else, one of the other guys, one of the bigger name former, artists that's doing indie work now, saying there was like a Walt Simonson one or something. It's not in print. Like these things are selling for like $50 on eBay. And I'm like, okay, you're just stupid at this point if you won't reprint them. We don't care. It's like you're not going to hide it from everyone. You're just making someone else make money off of it. You're just being dumb.
And here's the other thing is I couldn't see any ESG reason not to print this. It didn't have, I think it would have met all of the, or at least some of the standards that they have to live by these days. You know what I mean? As far as like DI and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it had diversity in it.
What? You're making that up, Shieldwall.
That's
I
no
don't
way
want
to
hear
talk
your
about
lies.
that Spider Woman.
But it had more than that. I mean,
Hillbilly She-Hulk,
right?
Emma Frost kicking butt and then revealing who she really was. Yeah, I got. Yeah,
right. It didn't. It might not hit every box, but it's good enough to where they should be. It's like a license to print money if they were to put this out.
Well, the main reason they don't want to do it is, like I said, a little bit of what I said before, but the main reason they want to move on from it. That's why they did the new Secret War. The new Secret War does away with this Earth. This Earth doesn't exist. They did away with it. So it's one of the Earths that die, and they kind of pull Logan into this other. And I guess I don't know. It's just when you try to get into this stuff, you just I think Roman, you said it best, or maybe Shieldwall, you said it. I don't know. All right, bear with me. Mark Millar writes nice contained things. And you could have easily have done nice contain. And I think this is the era that we need to go back to. We need to go back to the Hellboy. Hellboy's the one that's been doing it the longest. Just grab a Hellboy book. They're all self-contained little stories, man. Just go grab one and just dive into the 6, 8, 10 issues or whatever it is in that graphic novel and keep it moving. So this has been amazing. This is probably one of our longest comic talks we've ever had, and it is worthy. It is definitely worthy. It's a good book, and hopefully you guys will tell us what you think out there. All of these guys' links are in the description. Make sure you're subbed. Make sure everyone is connected to everybody. Throw them on their watch time overnight. Like, you got to sleep. Just hit some repeats. Just let it run. Just let it run. Do them right, man. We gotta have strong. So, but gentlemen, thank you so much for doing this. It's been a complete blast. I appreciate you so much, and all of you out there. Thanks for watching. I am Pops.